losing, isn't it? When someone takes up space in your mind, every morning when you wake up, every night before you fall asleep, and yet they're not actually in your life. They're not calling, not texting, not showing up. Still, their name keeps echoing in your thoughts. You wonder, why can't I stop thinking about him? Is it a sign? Does it mean something deeper? Here's the truth. When someone is always on your mind but nowhere to be found in your real life, it's not a coincidence. It's a message. Not about them, but about you, your heart, and what you deserve to understand about this situation. Because thinking about him doesn't mean he's thinking about you. And silence, it always means something. Let's talk about what it really means when he's always on your mind, but nowhere in your life. Because you can't get him out of your head means there's something real between you. We've all had those moments where someone lingers in our thoughts, like a song stuck on repeat. You think about what he's doing, who he might be talking to, what he meant by that last interaction, or why he's gone so quiet. Your mind replays memories, even tiny ones, and suddenly they feel massive, like they must mean something more. But that's not always the truth. In fact, often it's not about him at all. It's about what he represents and the potential you saw in him. When someone creates a strong emotional impression on you, whether it was through charm, mystery, or even just a moment of vulnerability, it's easy to get attached to the idea of who they could be in your life. You hold on to that moment, that connection, that eye contact, that night where everything felt electric. But the hard truth is, those fleeting moments don't always mean what you want them to. They don't always build into something lasting, and yet your brain keeps looping them, convincing you there's something worth waiting for, that maybe if you think about him enough, it will draw him back. We confuse intensity with depth. Just because someone made you feel something strong doesn't mean they've earned space in your heart. And yet, when they disappear or pull away, it's almost like our mind clings harder. We interpret their distance as a puzzle we need to solve, as if figuring out why they're not talking to us will somehow fix the ache they left behind. It becomes less about who they are and more about the tension of not knowing. The space they leave behind is what keeps us hooked, not necessarily the person. Sometimes the people who stay in our heads the longest are the ones who gave us the least. Why? Because when someone is consistent, emotionally available, and communicates with clarity, there's no mystery. There's no emotional cliffhanger. But when someone pulls away, ghosts, or keeps you guessing, your mind fills in the blanks, and it almost always fills them with hope. You imagine the best case scenarios. You build stories around why he's quiet. Maybe he's busy, maybe he's nervous, maybe he feels something deep too, but just doesn't know how to express it. Those stories keep you emotionally invested. They keep you from moving on. But here's the thing. This connection you feel, if it only exists in your head, is not a connection. It's a fantasy built on the scraps of real interaction and fueled by uncertainty. When you really think about it, what are you holding on to? Are you holding on to what you hoped he would be? Often, we stay emotionally tied to people who didn't even show up for us because we're not chasing them, we're chasing closure. We want a reason, an answer, a final scene that ties it all together. But life rarely gives us that. And the longer you stay caught in that mental loop, the more of your power you hand away. You're not obsessed with him because he was everything you ever wanted. You're obsessed because there was no ending. no clarity, no truth spoken out loud. You're not thinking about him because of the love he gave. You're thinking about him because of the love you wanted to give and never got the chance to. You're thinking about the version of the story where he turned around, realized your worth, and made it all make sense. But if he's not here now, if he's not choosing you now, then that version doesn't exist. And even if it feels painful to let go of the idea of someone, it's even more painful to keep feeding energy into something that gives you nothing back. Your thoughts are precious. Your heart is valuable. And every moment you spend replaying a highlight reel of someone who isn't actively showing up in your life is a moment you could be choosing you. You don't need someone to say the words, "I'm not interested," for you to recognize disinterest. Silence is an answer. Avoidance is an answer. Lack of effort is an answer. So the next time he drifts into your thoughts, pause, ask yourself, what am I really thinking about? Is it him? Or is it the version of love I've been longing for? Because there's someone out there who will give you real connection, not just mental space. But you won't be able to see them if your mind is still tied to someone who already let go. Thinking about him constantly doesn't prove love. It reveals what still needs healing. And healing doesn't begin with him showing up. It begins with you showing up for yourself. When someone stops talking to you, it can feel like a question mark with no answer. You keep checking your phone, wondering if you missed a message. You go over everything you said, every conversation, looking for the moment where things might have changed. But no matter how much you search, there's nothing, just silence. And it hurts, not just because they're gone, but because they didn't give you a reason. But here's the truth, silence is a reason. It is communication, and it says far more than any words ever could. We're taught to listen to what people say, but the reality is you learn even more by watching what they do or what they don't. When someone doesn't reach out, when they don't check in, when they leave your messages on read for days or stop initiating altogether, that behavior is telling you something. It's telling you where their priorities are. It's telling you how much or how little effort they're willing to make. And even if they never say it out loud, their silence is a clear sign of where you stand in their life. The problem is, we don't always want to believe it. We give them the benefit of the doubt. We tell ourselves, maybe they're busy, maybe they're stressed, maybe something happened. And while it's true that life gets in the way sometimes, genuine interest doesn't just disappear. People make time for what they care about. They reach out to the people who matter. If someone is thinking about you, you're going to feel it. You won't be left in the dark, wondering. Silence isn't confusing when someone truly wants to be in your life. But when they don't, it gets quiet. And in that quiet, your mind tries to protect you. It tries to come up with reasons why their silence might still lead to something. You start to romanticize the idea that maybe they're pulling away because they feel too much, or that they're scared of how deep the connection is. But often, the simplest explanation is the truest. They're not reaching out because they don't want to. That doesn't mean you weren't good enough. It just means they weren't ready or willing to match what you were bringing to the table. Silence is not just the absence of words. It's the presence of a decision. And sometimes that decision is that they're not choosing you. That realization stings. It's easier to wait in hope than it is to accept that someone isn't showing up. But what's harder in the long run is investing your heart in someone who is already emotionally checked out. Every moment you wait for a message that never comes is a moment you're holding yourself back from the life and love you actually deserve. It's important to remember that the way someone treats you in their absence is just as important as the way they treat you when they're around. If they disappear without explanation, if they leave you in a state of emotional limbo, that speaks volumes about their level of respect and maturity. You deserve someone who chooses communication over confusion, someone who would rather have a difficult conversation than vanish and leave you to fill in the blanks. But you only make space for that kind of person when you stop chasing the ones who speak in silence. We think we need closure. We think we need someone to explain why they stopped talking, why they pulled away. But closure isn't something they give you, it's something you give yourself. When someone shows you through silence that they're not invested, your job isn't to decode them. Your job is to believe them, to take that silence as your sign, not a sign to hold on, but a sign to let go. If someone can go days, weeks, or even months without talking to you, you're not on their mind the way they're on yours. And that's okay, because their silence is creating space for something better, for someone who doesn't leave you guessing, for someone who understands that communication is the foundation of connection. You don't build a relationship on potential, you build it on presence. So instead of filling the silence with stories, let the silence speak. Let it remind you of your worth. Let it be the moment where you finally stop waiting for them and start choosing yourself. Because when someone does talk to you, they're telling you something loud and clear. They're not ready, not willing, or not right for the kind of love you're offering. And that's not rejection, it's redirection. It's your chance to walk away with your dignity, your power, and your peace intact. When someone goes quiet and pulls away, the mind doesn't always let them go. Instead, it clings tighter. You start to create stories not based on what's happening, but on what you wish was happening. You imagine the reasons for their absence, the possible feelings they might have, the excuses that make their silence feel less painful. But the truth is, much of what you're experiencing isn't love, it's fantasy. It's the mind's way of protecting you from the pain of rejection by offering you a more beautiful, hopeful version of reality. One where they still care. One where it's not really over. It's easier to fall in love with someone in your imagination than to face the truth of what they've shown you in real life. When someone doesn't give you clear answers, when they leave without explanation, it creates space for uncertainty. And in that uncertainty, your mind starts filling in the blanks. You take their last message and stretch it into a promise. You take a memory and replay it until it becomes something more significant than it ever was. The longer they stay silent, the more time you spend building a version of them that only exists in your head. Fantasy becomes a coping mechanism. It keeps the pain at bay. If you believe there's still a chance, you don't have to grieve yet. If you convince yourself that they care deep down but just don't know how to express it, you don't have to walk away. So you stay emotionally attached to someone who's already emotionally absent. You keep checking their social media, reading old messages, playing out imaginary reunions in your head, because it feels better than facing the reality that they chose not to show up for you. This fantasy version of them is not grounded in who they actually are. It's based on who you wanted them to be, the way they made you feel during your best moments, the potential you saw in them, the future you envisioned together. You're not holding on to the real person. You're holding on to the hope they once gave you. And hope is powerful. It can keep you stuck for months, even years, waiting for someone to become the person you've already built in your mind. But here's the problem. Every time you romanticize someone who isn't present, you betray your own reality. You overlook the pain they caused, the effort they didn't make, the conversations they avoided, you excuse behaviors would never accept from someone else. And the longer you stay in that place, the harder it becomes to see things clearly. You start to believe that the fantasy is better than starting over, that it's better to hold on to what could have been than face what is. The truth is, people who truly care don't leave you in a state of confusion. They don't need you to read between the lines. They don't disappear and hope you figure it out. They show up consistently, openly, and with intention. If someone leaves you in silence, if they make you question your worth, that's not love. That's emotional distance disguised as mystery. And mystery can be intoxicating, but it's not fulfilling. You don't need to create stories to justify someone's absence. You don't need to paint them as misunderstood or emotionally complicated just to make sense of why they're not here. What you need is honesty. You need to see them not as the person you hoped they'd be, but as the person they chose to be, the one who left, the one who stopped trying, the one who made you feel uncertain instead of secure. And once you see that clearly, the fantasy starts to fall apart. Not because it was never beautiful, but because it was never real. Real love doesn't live in your imagination. It lives in action, in consistency, in presence. It doesn't require you to wonder. It gives you clarity. It makes you feel safe. So when you find yourself stuck in the loop of imagining what it could be if only they came back, ask yourself, am I in love with them or with the story I created? Because if it's the story, then you hold the pen. You can write a new one where you're not waiting, not hoping, not building castles in the clouds, and where you're grounded, present, and open to a love that's actually here. Letting go of the fantasy isn't giving up, it's growing up. It's choosing truth over illusion. It's choosing yourself over someone who already let go. When someone isn't showing up for you, when they're not calling, not texting, not making an effort, it's easy to get stuck in the waiting game. You wait for a sign. You wait for them to come around. You wait for closure, clarity, or maybe even a change of heart. But all the waiting does is freeze your energy in one direction. You're still thinking about them, still checking your phone, still wondering if today will be the day they remember what they had in you. But here's the truth. The longer you wait, the more disconnected you become from yourself. Because when someone doesn't show up for you, the most powerful thing you can do is show up for yourself. Your attention is one of the most valuable things you own. When you give it to someone who isn't present, you pour energy into a space that never fills up. You keep investing in someone who's not investing back. And every time you do, you reinforce the belief that you need them to feel whole again. But you don't. You never did. What you need is to take all that energy and turn it inward, to stop asking why they disappeared and start asking what you need to feel strong, grounded, and alive again. Redirecting your focus isn't easy, especially when your emotions are tied up in someone who made you feel seen, even if it was only for a moment. But clarity comes not from obsessing over why they pulled away. It comes from deciding that you deserve better than half effort, mixed signals, or silence. It's choosing to walk away from confusion and into the kind of life where your time is spent on things and people that reciprocate. This isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about caring enough about yourself to stop bleeding energy into someone who's no longer in your life. Because every minute you spend overthinking him is a minute you don't spend creating something beautiful for yourself. He's not texting back? Pour that energy into your goals, He's not calling. Call someone who values you. Build your friendships. Go to the gym. Create art. Start that project. Reclaim your space. This isn't about distraction. It's about redirection. It's about reminding yourself that your worth doesn't rise or fall based on someone else's ability to recognize it. And when you finally shift your focus back to yourself, something powerful happens. You begin to remember who you are. You start to reconnect with the parts of you that existed long before they came into your life. The passion, the purpose, the confidence, the creativity. You stop waiting for someone else to choose you and start choosing yourself. Every single day, in every single moment. You're not here to chase someone who's emotionally unavailable. You're not here to prove your worth to someone who already stopped showing up. You're here to live, to grow, to experience real connection with people who are actually present. And sometimes the only way to open the door to those people is to close the chapter with someone who couldn't meet you where you are. That doesn't mean you stop feeling. Of course it still hurts. Of course you still miss them sometimes. Healing isn't about being numb. It's about learning to feel without letting those feelings control your direction. You can miss someone and still choose yourself. You can care about them and still walk away. The key is not letting your care turn into self-abandonment. The truth is, someone who wants to be in your life will make it known. They won't leave you guessing. They won't make you feel invisible. And if someone isn't stepping forward, then that space isn't meant to stay empty. It's meant to be reclaimed. Not by another person, but by you. You fill it with your passions, your boundaries, your energy. You become so full in your own life that their absence no longer feels like a loss. It feels like liberation. You are not here to wait for someone to come back. You are not here to dim yourself, hoping someone will notice. You are here to be bold with your heart, brave with your choices, and relentless in protecting your peace. The version of you that waits and wonders, let her rest, because the version of you that rises, that reclaims her focus, that redirects her love inward, that's the version who builds a life where presence is mutual and love is real.